I come to find out in hindsight, I was pretty intensely sick. I was very, very insulin resistant, probably pre-diabetic. So I saw you and Dr. Jordan Peterson talking about diet. I've always been, a big advocate of diet. I haven't always adhered,
Yeah.
to the things that I probably should have been doing, but I considered myself very healthy. I was just getting older, and you see little signs of age. I think you and I are pretty close to the same age. You're maybe a little bit older than me. So you know the deal. You turn 35, 40, and you think, okay, you're just getting older and you're dealing with these things, and you don't attribute them to anything. And I went ketogenic, I think, after hearing Peter Attia and Tim Ferriss talk about it.
Hmm.
And I try to keep an open mind. And I thought, well, these guys aren't selling me anything. They're speaking very highly of it. I'll try it. So I think about 2016, I went keto and was kind of blown away at the ease of maintaining my body composition, the brain fog. I thought I'd developed, adult onset ADHD. I couldn't concentrate the way I had. I saw a pretty significant jump in my health after going keto, and I did that for 2 or 3 years. And then I heard you and Dr. Peterson talking about carnivore, and I figured, well, I was blown away by keto. What do I have to lose? So I tried it for a couple of days. My gums didn't bleed when I flossed, and my radial neuropathy went away, and my hair started growing back, and just all this weird stuff happened. That's probably about 2019. And I adhered pretty strictly to a carnivore diet for the last few years. And then what actually brings me here today, I was standing at a water cooler having a conversation with a guy about 6 months ago, and my hands and feet went numb.
Mm. And
I thought I'd had a stroke. So I thought, okay, I'll get a good night's sleep and I'll see what happens. Like any good, 47-year-old man, I ignored the health signs, and I probably should have gone to the emergency room immediately. But 3 or 4 days later, I found myself unable to control my body. I was weak. I couldn't keep up with people while they were walking. I couldn't buckle my pants. Everything was just it went from tingling to weak to essentially paralyzed. It crawled up my arms and feet. I found myself in the hospital. I think I got to the emergency room by Monday, and I was eventually diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Mm.
And I'm confident that my diet up to that point and then my diet post Guillain-Barré syndrome has been a significant part of my ability to mitigate the damage that it did and then to recover. So probably the biggest part of my story is the GBS.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Guillain-Barré is a neurological condition. It often results in weakness, particularly proximally. That's kind of the hallmarks, like the shoulders, the hips, and things like that. You'd mentioned prior to that you'd had radial neuropathy. Did I hear that correctly? So you had neuropathy of your radial nerve? Is that what you told?
Well, it was I self-diagnosed,
Okay.
right? But
Okay.
about 46, mid 40s, I guess early 40s. You get that tingling in your feet where you got to let your feet hang out of the sheets to be comfortable, and you don't really know why. The rest of your body is comfortable, but you could feel tingling. I was starting to get that in my toes and my hands. I would do bench press, and I couldn't bench press heavy because the bar would hurt my hands. It was like a nerve pain. I think I was probably developing something similar to like a carpal tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, my body, because I was a good athlete and I'm lean and strong and I'm good at certain things, and I looked good in the mirror, I thought I was healthy, but I wasn't. And like I said, in hindsight, once I went carnivore and all these things resolved, I realized how unhealthy I was in hindsight. Radial neuropathy is not something I was ever diagnosed with, but it was clear, little things like my tinnitus went away, all of the things that would be attributed to, say, like the death of the tiny capillaries in your fingers and your ears and your eyes. The reason people are pre-diabetic or diabetic are losing their toes, losing their eyesight, etc. As you're well aware, this state of chronic hyperinsulinemia has a very negative impact on these tiny capillaries, right? The dementia, the stroke, I think a lot of that is attributed to that chronic hyperinsulinemic state. And I was in that for probably close to 45 years without knowing it. So those little things, like I said, they went away. I mean, at some point, about a week in, my hair started growing back. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's undeniable. You guys know, you can't unsee once you've seen it.
Yeah, let's go back to the Guillain-Barré syndrome. So that's something. Do we have a cause for you? Because it can be sometimes after an infection. Some vaccines have actually been associated with Guillain-Barré. Do we have any idea what might have
That
triggered it?
vaccine.
What's that?
My doctors avoided that conversation.
Hmm.
I told them I got the vaccine, and I don't know how far you want to go into it here. I don't want to get you, cut off of YouTube or whatever, but I got the vaccine that is associated with it in October, because I was working as a government contractor. I was on site with the government.
Yeah.
So I had to get it. I didn't want to get it. I got the one that is not the mRNA.
Yeah.
And it says right there on the bottle that it's associated with it. Well, my immune system basically went haywire. I never get sick. And from October to about August of last year, or October the year prior to August of this past year, I got sick 3 or 4 times, which was very abnormal for me. And then I came down with Guillain-Barré. And the first thing they asked me when I ended up in the hospital was, have you gotten a flu shot recently, or have you had a viral illness? And I'd had a viral gastrointestinal illness that I couldn't shake. And then I finally got better. And like I said, I was sitting there one day, standing at the water fountain, having a conversation with a coworker, when it just hit me out of the blue like a lightning bolt. I literally just remember going, oh, my toes and fingers just went numb. And then from there, it was a progressive, as you know, degenerative type thing.
Yeah, I mean, and prior to this, recent, series of COVID vaccines, I mean, people were getting Guillain-Barré associated with flu vaccines and some other ones years and years ago. So that's probably why it's considered, a known, rare side effect of this. So you started getting numbness in your feet and stuff like that. So how did it progress for you? When did you get diagnosed? How long did it take you to get to a diagnosis?
Sure. So Thursday night is when my hands and feet went, and my fingers basically, they went numb. I told myself I get a good night's sleep. I woke up the next morning. I had difficulty buckling my belt buckle. It was numbness, tingling, and a loss of control at first, a loss of fine motor function. By Saturday, when I was walking with my compadres in the hall, I couldn't keep up, and I would make an excuse like, "Oh, hey, let me make a phone call. I'll catch you guys in the cafeteria." We were in a hotel doing an offsite, and I had to make excuses why I couldn't keep up. By Saturday night, I couldn't undress myself. So Sunday morning, we were actually working in Dallas, and I was based in San Antonio at the time. So Sunday morning, I realized if I didn't get home to San Antonio, which is about a 5-hour drive, that I'd end up in the hospital in Dallas, and I might not ever leave it. And I have, 3 little girls. I have a wife. So I left, and I drove from Dallas to San Antonio. And to your point earlier, by this time, my hands and my feet and most of the distal, I guess, is the medical, right?
Right.
From my shoulders down was weak, and from my hips down, everything was weak, and I could barely feel it. So I spent 5 hours trying to drive, and instead of being able to use my ankles and wrists, I had to use my shoulders and hips. So by the time I got there, I was completely exhausted, right? Because everything was a huge core movement. A 5-hour drive took me about 8. I pulled into the house Sunday afternoon. My wife threw me in the car and took me to the emergency room. They diagnosed me on Monday, and I think on Tuesday evening, they hit me with my IVIG treatment. Okay. So by the time I started IVIG on Tuesday evening, I was essentially fully paralyzed. They were testing my breathing because, as you know, that paralysis hits your diaphragm, and now you're on a respirator or whatever. So it was progressively worse, from tingling in the feet until on Thursday night to essentially full blown paralysis, unable to feed myself, wipe myself, dress myself, or anything by Tuesday afternoon.